Hello everyone and welcome to the session today. In the workshop today we're going to be talking about teaching qualitative analysis online using Quirkos. Now a lot of this is going to focus on some of the features in Quirkos Cloud, which allows for live collaboration, and we're going to talk about some of the ways in which that can help teach qualitative methods and especially qualitative analysis if you're delivering online learning. So that's obviously that a lot of people are looking to be doing over the next couple of months. A lot of courses are going to start to be taught online, especially in the UK. And we're trying to help quite a lot of people who who traditionally do kind of face-to-face learning, kind of migrate that into online teaching and learning. And we're actually going to have a specific blog post in the next month with some kind of generic tips about doing online teaching with a particular kind of qualitative slant on it. And we're going to highlight some of the tips from that today. But what we're going to try and do is show you some kind of practical ways that you can use Quirkos to help get a good level of engagement and proper learning with students when you're going through qualitative methods, because it's not always the easiest thing to do for students to understand, and especially when it's not being delivered face to face, that can deliver additional challenges. So if you've not come across Quirkos before, so basically it's a software package, computer assisted qualitative data analysis software, which can help with the qualitative analysis. It's not something that does qualitative analysis for you. Just like a set of highlighters, it's a tool which, when used well, can help you with qualitative analysis. It doesn't matter what type of qualitative analysis, what kind of approach you're doing. It's just there to kind of help you manage the data, manage your qualitative sources, and especially help out with the coding side of it, but it can help with a lot more other stages of analysis as well. I always like to describe qualitative software as something that helps you read data. And basically, qualitative software helps you read the data in different ways to help you understand it by reading it through different lenses, viewing it in different ways. So when we're talking about online learning, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of challenges when moving teaching which was traditionally done face-to-face to moving that online. And I'm differentiating here between teaching and learning because I think there's a different thing here. It's one thing to to teach, to basically speak at someone and to have someone learn and understand and engage with that. I think that's a different level. And I think one of the challenges when doing online learning is that we lose quite a lot of the traditional methods that we have of knowing when our students are understanding something. We don't see that puzzled look in their face. We don't know when we can't, it's more difficult to judge when the whole class is confused about something. And it's also often difficult in these spaces for students to interact and engage in kind of small ways and say, hey, I didn't understand that. Now part of that becomes an onus on the facilitator of that session. But again, another part of that is just kind of planning and having a space which allows for that kind of engagement. So we're going to talk about some of the ways that can help, and how Quirkos, because you can do live collaboration in it, can help with that kind of level of engagement. So here are some basic kind of online tips which are coming from the forthcoming blog post article. And we've got an expert on online learning who's going to be going through those. But I'm just going to give you some kind of the headlines which they suggested here. So one of the first things that they wanted to stress was that you should plan to do online teaching in 15 to 20 minute chunks, so that you've got an opportunity to break and have some kind of simple activity. That could be something like just having a bit of a chat, a discussion. It could be something more formal like a quiz or reflection, or just an opportunity to stop and ask questions. Depending on the software that you're using to do online teaching and learning, and the method that you're delivering it, there are various different ways that you can do these kind of activities, but they really help kind of keep students more engaged and provide that vital kind of stage for students being able to feed back. One of the other things is to try and think about ways to create class community. Again, if you're working with students face to face, they can develop a community. They can talk to each other. There's opportunities for peer learning, for discussion. And one of the things which kind of seems to very much distinguish between those courses which are rated highly by their students and those that are rated poorly is students really want to get something out of their higher learning experience, and part of that is engaging with other students. They love to work with great lecturers and professors in the field, but they also like the opportunities for discussing things with each other. And so depending again on the software that you're using to deliver that, you can do things like have various kind of live sessions. So you may do a kind of like a live coffee session, which gives students to interact in a kind of more informal way. But you may also have kind of asynchronous methods. So you may have things like discussion boards, which people aren't tied to contribute to any particular time, but they can leave a message on the message board, start a discussion, and then the tutor can jump in if there's particular things that they want to address or answer in that session. That's kind of what I was saying there, is to try and have ways in which students can interact with live sessions, but also kind of sequential environments. So like discussion forums, discussion boards, Pebble pads if you've got those, or you can even set up wikis for the course in which students can interact with each other. One of the last tips they had was a kind of very practical thing, was not to be too frightened of having awkward silences in online sessions. Their advice was that these awkward silences happen quite a lot if you're doing a seminar or if you're doing a lecture online and you ask a question. People aren't going to jump in there straight away. They kind of feel that it's more pronounced in an online environment, that silence feels more artificial, has more anxiety linked to it. But I think it's actually very important to allow those spaces for students to jump in. Again, you don't have that live feedback. You can't see that often where students just have a puzzled look on their face, or they've got a hand up. Some of the software allows you to literally put up a virtual hand to show that you want to ask a question. But still, there's always that issue of confidence, and you want to encourage a wide range of participation from different students. So you don't want always just the most confident students to jump in and always dominate the questions and the feedback. You want a chance for everyone to get involved. And sometimes that's just allowing that space to sit there until someone else fills it up. So don't be afraid to let those awkward silences sit there. So there's going to be a lot more tips on online learning in general, and also more specifically about teaching qualitative methods and qualitative analysis in a forthcoming blog post. When that's up, I'll put the link below this video for people who are watching it later. But now I want to talk to some of the things more specifically about using qualitative software. Very fortuitously, literally 5 hours ago, one of my good friends and colleagues, Christina Silver, has posted a blog post article on some of the issues about teaching qualitative software, and some of the classic questions. Do you teach methods first? Do you teach software first? Do you teach them concurrently? Do you teach software at all? Should you show people doing it offline with highlighters and bits of paper, even if you're just showing how messy it could be? So again, I'll put the link to this at the end of the blog post, at the end of the video here. It's a great blog post article, and it gets into a lot of these issues that I was going to talk about a lot better than I could. So I'm going to defer entirely to that resource for that one. But specifically what I'm going to demonstrate today is using Quirkos Cloud for teaching qualitative analysis in particular. Because Quirkos Cloud allows for many people, in fact an unlimited number of people, to be logged in and working on a project at any one time and see their updates in real time, it's a fantastic resource for learning. I think for learning qualitative analysis. Obviously you can use this way if you've got a research team and you want people from across the world to be collaborating on a project either at the same time or sequentially. It's very easy to do with Quirkos Cloud. You just choose who you want to share the project with. There's no downloading or merging or uploading. Everything happens live in real time, and everything is stored and saved and backed up for you. But I want to get back to this idea of using it for learning, because you can kind of work together. You can literally collaborate on a research project, almost as if you had, like a giant a piece of flip chart paper with text and highlighters on it, or if you had a transcript you put up on the whiteboard and you were getting students to come up and put sticky notes, post-it notes all over that to show how you were kind of coding it and things you're bringing out from there. This kind of can emulate some of those ways which you would use in a face-to-face session to kind of teach some of the basics of qualitative analysis. So there's also the chat function. We mentioned kind of doing live and sequential ways for students to interact with each other. The chat function can be used in Quirkos for keeping your kind of own reflexive diary or kind of like analytic text on the process. A lot of people will use it for that, even if they're working on a project just by themselves. But again, you can have this live discussion, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute with a project. And that does really allow you to do things and have kind of discussions about how you're coding and doing things without having to rely on any other software. So I think it's very important to actually show qualitative analysis happening. I find that a lot of students see it as a bit of a black box. The processes of creating a code is a mystery to a lot of people. How do I know that this should be a code, or how do I know it should be a theme? How do I know what kind of analytical approach to take? How do I know what bits of text to put in a theme? It's very difficult to create set guidelines for this because it's going to vary so much depending on the method, depending on the analytic approach, and depending on the type of data that students are working with. And students are very frustrated learning something for the first time when they can't kind of have a easy, steps to follow, do this and then that. So I think being able to show qualitative analysis in a live way, in a way that people can see someone who's experienced with it doing it, can really help break apart that black box and show what's going on in the process of analysis. So now I'm going to turn to the software itself, so the Quirkos software, and give a bit of a demonstration of an example project where I'm logged in twice, once theoretically as a teacher and as a student, and show you how you can use it to demonstrate doing online analysis. So here is the kind of standard Quirkos interface, and I've got here an example project which was on the Scottish referendum for independence. It's a real qualitative research project that you can download, and again I'll put the link in the description, and you can download this project and you can use it for learning and teaching. It basically has 12 semi-structured interviews, so those are shown as tabs along here, and they also get so here's the list of all the different sources in here. So these are transcribed semi-structured interviews which were anonymized, so we can use them for teaching, and there's also kind of example data sets here. So for example, we've got this is how I kind of did some kind of very basic descriptive thematic coding, but you can also get these sources blank and work with them yourself. So for example, here I'm looking at things about Scotland, about Scottish identity. That's one of the themes that comes out. The different messages, also things about like media, how these kind of political debates were shown in different mediums, so TV and TV debates, for example. And I'm also looking at things like some basic sentiment analysis. So I've looked to see kind of the positive and the negative elements here. Of the different ways that people were talking about the debate which was happening at this time. So even if you don't really know the context to the research, it's a pretty interesting data set to kind of get your teeth into. There's lots of different things that you could be pulling out here. So what we've got from the here is this is basically the coding framework that I created, and this was kind of a deductive coding kind of approach where I was creating codes on the fly. So for example, if I wanted to create a new code here which was about the polls, so here someone is talking about political polling, I can select some text, drag and drop that onto the plus button here, and that will create a new theme which we'll call polls. And then there we go, we've got that new bubble there which has got this text in it about polls. And so we can create new codes on the fly. Double clicking on any of these themes will show you the text under them. So we want to say what people were talking about business, double click on that bubble. And now on the right, this is showing us all the different quotes, the highlights, the sections of text that we have where people were talking about business, the impact of business on the referendum for independence or an independent Scotland. Click the home button to go back there. Now there's other ways we don't have to code. So open up here the memos column, and this allows us to do things like IPA and line by line analysis and in vivo analysis, where we can kind of drag and drop the codes here. And if we're doing in vivo coding, we might say actually might get it right. And then you can go through and you can mark up the text in this way with these kind of annotations, and then you can go through and then you can code it however you want to later on. So the memos are a very important way to potentially show how you can do different approaches to coding. And one of the other things I was going to show you, of course, is the live chat here. So this button here, so we've got the live chat. You can see who's contributed here. I'm actually logged in on my laptop as well, so if I say hello webinar, this should pop up here. Okay, all right, so you can see we've got D Turner, that's me on this computer, and Daniel Turner on the other one. And the reason that this can be quite useful in teaching and learning is that you can have a discussion. You can say, you know, did you understand why I created a new code for polls rather than put it under the media code? And then someone else could come back and say, not really, can you show again? So what I want to get across is that this is an opportunity for both live engagement, so you can set up a particular session, where you're also using your online platform, be it Adobe Connect or Collaborate or Blackboard, whatever you're using, and you can use that for audio or video streaming. But you can also just have a session where you show the coding happening in real time and people can engage. So I can move the bubbles around here, other people can move the bubbles around as well. And then other people on the other software, who are using it on another computer, your students can also contribute to the coding, and you can see what they're doing in real time. So if I add something to a theme there, right, so I've just added something onto the negative theme. So it's so powerful being able to do this in a live collaborative environment. And it really helps students kind of see what's happening and the process as it emerges. And you may notice one of the things, if you're not familiar with Quirkos, is these bubbles. So the bubbles show you basically how much you've coded to them. At the moment I've got the numbers on, but I can turn that off. The size of the bubbles shows you how much you've added to them. So if I start coding some more things to future, for example, eventually you'll see the size of that starts to grow. So the size of the bubbles shows you what's emerging. And again, this kind of live feedback is very important to show students how collaboration, how the coding happens, how certain themes start to grow, and how you might start to think about subdividing and growing them. So for example, let's look at the personal opinions here. So I initially I can just pull these subcategories out. So the subcategories are codes which are just kind of dragged on top of each other. I originally had just a code which was about collecting people's personal opinions, and that was quite a generic thing. But then what I then ended up doing in this project, and it's quite common, is deciding that wasn't really specific enough. Actually, the opinions were very important, but what I really wanted to pull out to answer the research question was examples where people were actually changing their opinions. A lot of these kind of political issues, people are very set in their ways. So anything that referred to people changing their opinions, I really wanted to tag. So I had a separate code there for changing opinions, and I started to collect those things as they go along. And I created that as a subcategory of personal opinions. So that way, if I click on personal opinions, I not only see all of the text which I've coded to be about personal opinions, but also the examples, and I can specifically look for those where people are talking about changing their opinion. So for example, this one here said, I think they're afraid to vote yes. I think, well, those last minute promises that were made really assured people that change would be very gradual and very manageable. So it's talking about different political messages helping to change people's opinions of how they should vote. So that was very important for me to pull out. And again, I think showing students the sometimes the messy, chaotic nature of coding, and how people need to change their mind and change the names of themes and create themes of which may be more specific or more vague, and how you jump from codes to themes, and how you do open and axial coding, and how you do grounded theory versus how you do framework analysis. I think showing someone in Quirkos is very useful because it makes it so visual, it makes it so engaging, and being able to collaborate live in the project is a very important part of that. So what I've done here is just kind of show you some of the ways that you might use that for teaching and learning. I'm not going to go too much into how the software works in this session. We've got quite a lot of other tutorials on that. I'm specifically looking at those kind of issues which are about how you might adapt to kind of your module on teaching qualitative methods or qualitative analysis to work with Quirkos, or to work with software that helps you kind of teach online if you need to do that. But of course, people can also work sequentially. So people can work on projects in their own time. You can send them project files. You can share with people. So as I said before, there's no limit to the number of people that can collaborate on a project. So you can have everyone in your seminar group, tutorial group, or whatever go on there. You've also got the options here to set read and write privileges. So if I just pull up the account here, just logging into the Quirkos account here. So here's my account page here. You can access this from the Quirkos website. And you've got all these options to change your subscriptions and things. But if you look at the projects here, so here are a bunch of projects which I've used for testing basically. And I've got here referendum project framework. So for this one, for example, there's a little button here to share. I can choose share with. I'll put in my email address, daniel@quirkos.com. And I can choose here whether I want to give that person read access. So you might want a student to just be able to see what you're doing but not actually engage. Or you can give them full write access, and that allows them to create codes, delete codes, go through and do some coding, and so you can really kind of work together. And again, there's no limit to the number of people that you can share with there. So not sure if this person, yeah, right. So you can keep adding more things, and these different people have different privileges. You can change their access to read or write at any time, and you can also remove someone from being able to access that shared project. They can also share projects back with you. You can upload and download and share projects to them, and this all happens within the software or within the online account management page here. So it's very easy to do. There's no need to, as some other software has with their collaborative cloud, to set a project to be collaborated with, to then download it. A lot of software doesn't allow you to work kind of collaboratively at the same time, but Quirkos is a fully live experience, and so I really do feel that helps engage students more and get to student learning. So that's pretty much all that I was going to demonstrate for this session. I'd always encourage people to look at some of the other tutorials, and also to download and try the software for itself. So you can try Quirkos free for 14 days without paying a penny. And it's the full version of the software, so you get all the accounts and all of the features. There's no restriction on the number of projects you can do or the amount of collaboration that you can do. There's also an offline version of Quirkos as well, which has exactly the same interface and functionality, but stores projects locally on your data. So obviously our Quirkos server is GDPR compliant and is a very secure platform, which kind of ticks all the boxes for data protection. If you have a problem with your ethics board that don't want you to work like that, you can always save it offline mode. So if you need to keep that on an encrypted laptop, you can do that too. So do try Quirkos out with the trial there. There'll also be links to the learning resources on that website too. So if anybody had any questions about Quirkos in general, or about online learning and online teaching, please put something in the chat and I'll be able to answer that for you just now. So while I'm waiting to see if there's any questions, just another few things I'll mention about Quirkos. You'll find it's very affordable. You can pay for a one-off license, which is a permanent license. It doesn't expire. You can transfer it to computer, so it's basically yours for life. There's also a monthly subscription, which includes access to the software and our cloud service with the live collaboration features. And then it's also identical software on Windows, Mac and Linux. So it doesn't matter if some of your students are on Windows or some of them are on Mac. You can collaborate together. There's no compatibility issues, and the interface is the same. So you don't have to worry about teaching Windows students separately from teaching Mac students like you do with some of the software. It's identical. In fact, one of the reasons we started Quirkos was to make qualitative software easier to teach. We wanted something that could be included in a kind of qualitative module, and it wasn't going to take kind of all day just to learn the software, because you want to teach the analysis approaches as well. So I've got a couple of questions. That's really great. So first one, Romani, is it available for different languages also? So Quirkos, as currently the interface is only available in English, and the documentation is available in a couple of languages. But it does support any kind of text or language. So it doesn't matter if the sources or the codes are in a different language, even if it's a different type of alphabet or semiotic language. So you can use Korean, Japanese, Chinese or something like that. Quirkos supports all of those languages in it. And Xian Jones asks, can you track who's authored which bits of a project? Yes, absolutely. So every action in the project is tagged by the author here. And I'm very quickly going to show you how you'd show that with the query view here. So if I click on the query view, this allows us to kind of run a filter on the project. And one of the things I can search for example, is highlight author. So who did a piece of coding? And here I've got Daniel, Simon, D. Turner, and all these other people. So if we run that for Daniel, so that's now, sorry, I just closed the chat window. So that's now showing me all of the coding which Daniel did on the project. But I can also do a side-by-side comparison here as well. So I can split the screen and I can show you on one side the work that Daniel did, and on the other side the work that Simon did. I'm not sure if they've done any work. Yes, they did. Okay, great. So we can compare how Simon and Daniel coded to the negative theme here. So yes, you can see exactly who's done what bits of a project. You can also see when they did that. And this means that you can actually remove a person's work or particular parts of a person's work. Or through this comparison, you can start having a discussion again with the chat or in a live environment about why people have coded in different ways. And you can also do this for the codes that people created. So if you want to see if people created different codes to analyze the data and what those differences were, you can do that. So Romani's also asked, can I perform sound, image and film analysis through the software? No, I'm afraid not. So Quirkos is currently text only, so it can only work with transcripts. And Romani's also asked, can you share different analysis that may be done through Quirkos? So the types of analysis, we've tried to make the software as kind of neutral as possible for different types of analysis. So again, I demonstrated here how you might do some kind of grounded theory, IPA, or in vivo coding using the memos here. So something like framework analysis, you may create these codes ahead of time. I showed you how to create them on the fly, but of course you can create these codes ahead of time if you're doing a kind of framework analysis. And also there's different ways to group them. So this can help if you're doing something like you do kind of open and axle coding. So you may do open coding actually with the memos first. You may start to code those, and then you may create either higher level groups, or you may start to group these together. And in some of those approaches, you would use these codes here, so to drag and drop codes onto each other to create these topics and kind of subcategories under them. But you don't have to create hierarchical groups. If you're doing that, a lot of people use the groups function here for open and axial coding, and you can have different levels. So if you have different types of analysis, you might, for example, do discourse analysis, and then you might also decide that you will then want to go on and do semiotic analysis. So you could have codes which belong to one of those approaches or multiple of those approaches. If you create a group which is for your thematic codes and another group which is for your discourse analysis or your semiotic analysis, for example, then you can use the groups to distinguish between them. You can turn on and off the different groups, and then you can see which themes or codes belong to those different groups. That's pretty much all I can really get into here. Obviously, the different types of analysis that you can do for qualitative data are very varied. There's lots of different ways to apply them. And again, we try to provide quite a kind of neutral, flexible tool, so it's adaptable for all those kind of different approaches that you might have. Any final questions before I sign off here? Okay, that seems to be everything. So thanks so much for coming along, and really great to get all your questions as well. If you have any questions that you don't get a chance to ask here, you can always email us, support@quirkos.com, or you can ask us questions on our Twitter feed or our Facebook page, on any of our social media platforms. You can also ask questions in the YouTube videos here as well. So these questions will be preserved, and I'll try and type up some answers to them as well. Whenever people ask us questions in those videos, we do try and answer, so we're trying to get some live debate going on in the YouTube comments as well. So thanks so much for all of your time and engagement. Give Quirkos a try, and we really hope that it helps you with online teaching qualitative analysis in the next couple of months.